Hey everyone, welcome to this webinar. I'm Greg Nettle and I serve as president of Stadia. A lot of you are entering the room right now. Really excited about this episode that we're going to be talking today about preaching Easter and just some great things planned. Hey, as you all come in, we're going to leave the chat line open. Feel free to converse back and forth with each other or say, wow, that Josh has nice hair, or any comments. Any comments you want to make, that's all good. But if you have questions, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom. Very important, because we want to answer your questions, want this to be interactive, but we'll get those questions through the Q&A tab. We're going to start here in just a couple of minutes as people are coming in. So glad that you're joining us. Josh, what's the, get on in the chat and let us know where you're from and who you are. Hey, Josh, what's the weather like up there in Milwaukee right now?
It's actually awesome. We are going to enjoy 70 degrees today. So
no
it's
kidding.
going to be, and then next week it's all going to be in the 40s and 50s. So, but it tricks my kids, because then they were like, get out the bikes, let's go out, and you're like, nah, just keep your snow pants on,
you
for
guys
a little bit longer.
You guys are actually warmer than we are here in Northern Ohio. I'm up near Cleveland. And it's about, I think it's a high of 50 today, but it's just one of those nasty, rainy, stormy days here.
Oh, okay.
That we get for most of the spring.
Yeah.
That's why most people don't choose to live here. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Greg Nettle, and I serve as president of Stadia. So glad you're joining us today for this webinar, talking about preaching Easter. We have some amazing guests with us, Josh Amstutz and Albert Tate, who's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. As you come in, please use the chat, introduce yourself, love to know where you're from. If you're going to ask questions, please just click on the Q&A bar, and we'd be happy to interact with you and answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. Hey, as we get going here, I have a slide that I'm going to throw up because this is a new resource that we just discovered. Let's go ahead and throw this slide up about this survey right now. And this is a survey that it's a weekly survey that you as church leaders can take. And it's about, right now, how is COVID-19 impacting churches? And so for instance, it's impacting churches, but 50% of the churches surveyed in the weekly pastor poll from Barna and Glue report they're seeing a higher or much higher attendance than on a typical in-person Sunday. So this is a really cool thing. That you can see live feedback, and you just go to that website on the bottom and you click on that to register and be able, this is not something we get anything from. This is just a really great tool that we're taking part of and getting as many leaders and churches involved as possible, so we can get real-time data back, and you can see what's going on with churches and what we can do to serve one another and serve churches throughout the United States, across the country. Okay, let's go ahead and drop that slide. Hey, before I jump in with Josh and launch this, one of the things I wanted to talk with us about today is just the Easter gathering in general. And the vast majority of it, so I'm assuming that you're online and therefore you're doing an online service this weekend. Hopefully you are. I believe it's the responsible thing to do. But here's one of the things I wanted to say to you. This weekend, my family will be sitting in our living room, engaging with our church online. And I say our family because I want to remind you, my 11-year-old son, Elijah, will be sitting in the living room with us. Now, that's the only young child that I have at home. But please take advantage of the fact that this Easter is when families will attend and engage church together as a family. So important. As you design your Easter service, are you putting elements in that weekend gathering that will engage children of all ages? Okay, this is really important. Do you have a child praying in your weekend Easter service? Do you have maybe a children's song thrown in? I don't know. Do you have a fun video element that's going to appeal to children? It's not a children's service, but think of it like you would a normal Easter, where lots of parents bring their children into the main worship center rather than sending them to classrooms. But even more so this Easter, because we as parents want to worship with our children. So engage the families in your service. Secondly, I want to encourage you to be really creative with your digital gathering this weekend. Here's what I mean. You know, at Easter, you tend to ramp it up for the big Easter crowd that's coming, and we're going to have bigger crowds than ever before. Digital gives us the opportunity to be even more creative. There are amazing, already produced elements available out there for children. Go to Orange, orange.com, which is the children's curriculum leader in the country, really around the world. And they have a 30-minute package of stuff that will engage children. But there are also incredible music elements out there and worship elements and videos that you can plug in that will be really high impact. And so think about the creativity of it. And then thirdly, think about this as an incredible opportunity. Most healthy churches now have seen an uptick in their attendance in their gatherings online of about 2 times their normal gathering. We're going to be talking about that. So you're going to have tons of guests online this weekend. Many of you will see your attendance go up 2 or 3 times your normal rate. And then finally, what I would encourage you to do is make sure you give those guests next steps as you come out of that Easter online gathering. And so just the same as you would on the weekend, say, you know, make sure you let people know, hey, we're starting a new teaching series next weekend. It's going to be a killer series, and we'd love to have, don't say killer in light of the pandemic, but it's going to be a really good series that starts, you know, on anxiety next weekend, whatever, and come back and join us. Or if you're a guest here, you know, hey, I click this button. We'd love to stay in contact with you. And that's where you can collect their information. But make sure you give guests really concise, clear steps. Hey, I am absolutely delighted to have my friend Josh Amstutz with us today on this broadcast. Again, Albert Tate's going to join us in just a few minutes. But Josh is the pastor of Lakeland Community Church up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is up near Milwaukee. And Josh has just seen incredible growth in his church, I think from about 150 people to more than 1,500 people over the last few years. I met Josh, just last year, and we instantly connected, kindred souls. And I thought, man, I want to get to know this guy and develop a friendship with him. And we've been doing it. Josh, you're going to be joining the Futurist cohort that Stadia launches in April, well, this month, for churches that really want to engage and launch digital expressions of their church out of this pandemic. If you're interested in that, please just shoot us an email at Stadia and we'll get you information on those cohorts. But so glad you're in that cohort as well. Josh, thanks for joining us from Milwaukee. Hey, we were talking before we came on the webinar about your attitude towards this Easter. How are you feeling going into this Easter weekend?
Well, for me, I was telling you, I'm more jazzed about this weekend than probably ever as far as an Easter service is concerned. And I think I know the reason why is because people are just so spiritually hungry. They're hungry for hope. They're hungry for encouragement, and they're so open, and they're one click away. Everyone right now is living in the digital space or on social media. Some people are incredibly bored, you know, and so they're just living out there. And then others are, you know, they're really busy, but by the time they come home at the end of the night, that's the only place where they're going to find connection. And so they just land there. And so people are just so open. I mean, the comments that we're hearing every single day, I'm telling you, every single day right now are people from not just our area. So, I mean, this is like, I'm so hopeful because it's way beyond even just our region. You know, churches have always thought so regionally, and we've been really pressing into the digital space. You just alluded to it, but we're just going gangbusters after that now. And we feel like, why not? Because as we continue to say, hey, just share, man, we're getting people from all over the nation, actually all over the globe. You know, we used to have, a half dozen people from other nations. Now it's not uncommon for us to have, a half dozen people from other nations every single night tuning in to something that we're doing. And it's just this state and that state and every place on the planet, and people connecting with one another and saying, man, I just needed hope. I needed encouragement. I found it here tonight. And man, that just encourages me. So
now, when you say every night, this is you're doing something so unique that I want people to hear about. You're actually broadcasting from your home every single night. Tell us a little bit about that this Holy Week.
Yeah, I mean, we actually, on the day that this whole lockdown concept was kind of, we could see it coming. I talked with my team about, hey, let's get a way for us to broadcast out of our home, because I think there will be a day that even our best volunteers who want to come to the church and do a full live broadcast, they might say, let's all stay home. And so on those days, I want to be able to do a full weekend experience even out of my home. That's good. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of musicians in my house. I was telling Greg, I got 9 kids, and they're all amazing musicians. And so, yes, I kind of have a worship team in my house already. And so we've built kind of a studio, and I mean, full broadcast ability. And what we're doing though is, once again, on day one, we had this idea of let's land online every single night. 7 o'clock is when we're doing it. And we look at it this way, let's just have some fun. So we're trying to laugh every night together. We do usually a song or two, and then I teach for, like, I'm telling you, 3 minutes maybe. And then we just have a conversation. Sometimes we pray over people, and a lot of conversation. If we ask questions, here's what's crazy though, is I would say that we're engaging, at least 25 to 50% of a typical weekend experience on a nightly basis, which is just keeping people. I looked at this, I felt like the Lord said, this is discipleship opportunity at its top, that we can actually move people further, faster right now, because they're just engaging with us every single night. And so that's what we're doing every night. It's just something, sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes. And it's usually that laughter, a little bit of singing, a little bit of teaching, and an encouragement, and then send them on their way.
Now, I joined you for your weekend gathering this past weekend. And first of all, your wife's an amazing worship leader. So you have that. But then some of your children, or all of them, they play instruments. And so they're involved in the worship and stuff. But you were talking to me a little bit about the interaction that people are having as this is going on at night. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just people are, even I've said this. I've said, listen, even if we get boring, just talk with one another in the comment section, because people are just hungry for community. And so we've even looked at this as, how can this be opportunity for people to become missional? So share it. But then also we're throwing things out like, hey, if something is burdening you right now, just put it in the chat section, and then let's start praying for one another. And people are just going gangbusters. Like, people who don't even know one another are just starting to pray for one another right there. It's like the prayer team gets activated, if you will, right there. People start going on mission. If we throw out a question, like just last week, we had, I think, 1,600 comments in a half hour. I mean, it was just crazy. You couldn't keep up with the number of comments, just because if I throw out a question, people are wanting to interact with one another. And then they're following up with it after the fact as well. They're sending messages like, hey, I prayed for you because I saw your comment, and following up later, because they message one another. And those things, they'll double by the following morning, because people who didn't catch it live, they're just, because it was shared, they'll come back and they'll watch it with their family in the morning. They'll interact afterward. And so comments and prayer requests and encouragement just kind of flows out of that thing for the next 24 hours until we do the next live one. And it's just crazy.
Josh, we're getting some questions. What's the platform you're using to broadcast?
Well, we're just doing it off of Facebook Live, but we're using Mevo, which is kind of, a camera that can at least zoom around, and it can follow you. So I got one of my kids who's our video producer. I got one of my kids who's audio, who's mixing, and then I've got a whole bunch of them who are, singing and playing and that type of thing. But we're just doing it on Facebook Live.
So that's an easy, platform that any of us can use is Facebook Live. Hey, let's turn it back now towards Easter and preaching Easter to people, Josh. As you're heading into Easter, first of all, let's talk about, I kind of made a joke and said, we're going to talk about what you're preaching this Easter, but you've probably got this recorded already, but you don't.
No. Yeah, we'll do ours. we're shooting live, and we're doing it on, we have a Saturday night service normally. So we're still going to shoot live on Saturday night. It's great because it gets it in the cloud that night, and then that's rebroadcast live with full interactive teams, on Sunday morning. But that way we're not using internet traffic really in a heavy way. We're not relying on, hey, we got to broadcast live on Sunday morning when so many other churches are. It's already up there in the cloud. But yeah, right now
that's one of the most important things that we've learned during this. So, pre-recording is, you're doing it live at your normal Saturday night service time, but whatever you do, pre-record it before Sunday morning at the prime times, because this Easter weekend is going to be crazy with internet traffic. Unprecedented numbers online, literally, because of people jumping on Easter services. So make sure that you are pre-recording, because there's a good chance you'll go down if you're trying to do it live. Okay, so Josh, as you're getting ready for Easter, what's your team's thought process? What are you trying to deliver to the people that are going to be engaging with you?
Well, we're trying to deliver something that is, as you even mentioned, engaging from the front side. What is it that they can do at home? I think one of the greatest things that this pandemic has done for us is it's forced us all online, is it's forced us to think about what's the user, if you will, the consumer experience from home, and is it actually engaging as it would be in the room? I think we've all learned we can't just do a typical weekend experience how it's always looked.
Really important. People need to hear that. You don't want to just take your normal weekend gathering and dump it on people, because it's really hard to engage in that for an hour and a half. So again, back to your fundamental premises.
Yeah, so it's how do we help them have something tangible in the room or in their space that engages them with us? This is why I think even the Facebook Lives are so successful, because you're engaging with people. You're having really conversation right there on the spot. We all have our phones open. We're looking at comments. We mention people's names right there on the spot. It helps people be engaged. But even for like us this weekend, when it comes to Good Friday, we'll do a live stream Good Friday service, but we're telling our people, get 6 candles before that service. And you're going to have 6 candles at home. And as we kind of go through some of these moments of Jesus coming to the cross, you're going to put out a candle each time. So it'll get darker and darker in your space with your family until we get right to the cross. And we'll be doing that obviously in the room, where we've got these lanterns that'll go out one by one, and it'll lead straight to kind of this dark moment of Jesus laying down his life for us.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there. That's money just for that. That's a brilliant idea. Friends, that's called Fidgetal, and that's a real term. We talk about it a lot at Stadia in our digital world. It's the combination of the physical world and the digital world. And anything you can do to make your gatherings Fidgetal helps you engage with people, where you tell people in advance, hey, bring in a nail of some type, because we're going to talk about the nails to the cross. Bring in candles, and we're going to have light or snuff out candles. Anything you can do in advance, or something with children, get the X, whatever it is, for children to use during the weekend gathering. Okay, Josh, let me come back to you and the premises you're working with this weekend.
Yeah, and so even with that, one of the things that we're trying to, once again, be intentional or engaging with is like at the beginning of my message, I'm going to play a little game with everyone. And so my mini congregation is the worship team. So we've been doing this week after week, where we just kind of put 6 chairs around me, and they're all 6 feet apart, and I'll play a game, you at home versus the worship team. And so then I'll have, questions on like just silly Easter questions, and answer 1 through A through D, make your guess. It's just for fun. You guys at home, you as a family decide on what your answer is going to be. The worship team will decide on their answer, and then the answer is, and then how'd you do against the worship team? So just silly stuff that can hopefully, once again, it's trying to help people realize, like, hey, we can have fun. This is Easter, and we can do this as a family. It's just a way to engage people. I think our services can't just be this I don't know, this very rote, experience. It needs to be something that engages them and draws them in. And so that's one of the ways that I'm doing it.
Dude, okay, so here's the number one thing. Be engaging with people as much as you possibly can. And here's the deal. That's our responsibility, right? It's not theirs. They already have, I said, we were watching the service as a family, and I didn't tell anybody who we were watching, but I said, about 15 minutes into the service, my 11-year-old son said, "Dad, can I go play Fortnite now?" And that's tough, because that is what you're competing with at some level, right? And so you really do have to take it upon ourselves and say, I need to be engaging, not to be entertaining, but to be engaging. Okay, yes. What are some other underlying, kind of thoughts you're moving into Easter with?
Well, so, I mean, when I think about primary thought of what I'm going to be communicating, it's obviously this chat right now is even preaching hope this weekend. And that is my main point, is hope, specifically in the resurrection. See, here's what we know this is going to be happening right now around the nation, is death numbers are going to be hitting the peak. I mean, everything has been pointing toward that. And so here's this really kind of bizarre, surreal moment that we're heading into Easter, and yet our death numbers in America are going to be hitting the peak. Globally, they're going to be hitting this peak. And so I think it's going to be this emotional roller coaster that a lot of people are on. In fact, by this weekend, probably almost all of us will either know someone who is fighting COVID-19 or someone who has passed away from COVID-19. And so it's going to be a very real, you think about if you lose a loved one, it's a heavy season of time. And yet I think at funerals, there's always a unique opportunity at a funeral, because everyone is going, what now? What happens after this moment? Is there any hope in this? And I think there's just going to be this spiritual sensitivity to what now all over our nation, where everyone's going to be like, this just feels heavy. What now? And we can just step into that space and speak very honestly to that and bring hope there, that there is hope. I mean, here's what I'm coming to as far as the passage that I'm landing on, is I'm looking at how the disciples, when Jesus dies, they run, right? They run, they flee, they go into hiding, they go into quarantine, right? This is what they do. But after he raises from the dead, they're all right out in the streets, and they're willing to get beaten for it. Why? Because of the resurrection. The resurrection brought such hope that where in the past they were running in fear, now, because of the resurrection, they're sprinting out to take hope to the world. And
yeah,
so
Josh, I was just writing a letter to our staff this morning for Easter. John chapter 20. It's, if you don't have your message yet, man, this is one you can land on, because the apostles, literally the disciples, are in a room sequestered away. They're fearful. They've lost all hope. They believe Jesus is dead. And guess what happens? Jesus shows up and he says, "Peace be with you." But then he says, "I am sending you." And so they become hope experts. They're the ones now taking hope to the world. I mean, it's a brilliant passage that has so many, things today that we're dealing with. Josh, I want to come back to you here, because I think when we think about preaching this weekend, there are, I have a friend who's I'm not ultra close to. I'm good friends with him. He shoots we trap shoot together during the winter. And Greg, his name's Greg as well. He's on a ventilator right now. He's younger than me. He's on a ventilator, very seriously ill with COVID-19. And I'll tell you what, when you have a friend that's on, has coronavirus and they're on a ventilator, man, it makes you pray a lot more. It's serious. So what would you say, are you going to address that specifically in your message this weekend?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and what's awesome is there's public, mainstream headlines like Pink just this week. I just saw the article this morning. She says, because her child had COVID-19, and she said, "I prayed more this week than ever in my life." Okay, so this is Pink who's talking about this. So I think she just represents, though, once again, the general population right now, that everyone is going through some heavy things, and they are going, man, they're praying, they're crying out to God. I saw another interview with a guy from Ireland who, you know, he was on his deathbed. And he goes, I'm crying out to God, and God sent me, you know, this person who came and shared just hope with me. And everyone's crying out to God, and it's a great opportunity.
Well, first of all, Pink is one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. Amazing. Secondly, it looks like I have the wrong haircut for this webinar. Albert Tate, thanks for joining us. Albert is the senior visionary pastor leader of Fellowship Church out in Monrovia, California. Albert's a good friend of mine. We've been friends for years now, Albert, and he's a board member on Stadia's board. Love his insights and how he serves to help plant churches throughout the United States and around the world. Albert, you're getting ready for Easter, man. What's your attitude coming into this weekend?
We're getting ready. I'm actually going to record the message here in a couple of hours. So, you know, it's rainy out here in Southern California. It's an interesting Easter. And my posture, I'm very encouraged and obviously excited about declaring the truth of the resurrection. But there's a sense of heaviness, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's actually a good, sobering thing to say why Sunday's so important, why the resurrection is so important. And it's a different posture. I think churches usually are about getting ready to rock out and a bunch of lights and smoke. We can't afford any of that stuff, but I'm sure Josh has all that good stuff going on.
In my basement too.
Yeah, right. But it's cool though this year for it to just really be about the story. It is the greatest story that's ever been told, and we get a chance to make it about the story and simply tell the story. And I'm inspired by that.
What passage are you leaning into, Albert? Are you actually going to go with the resurrection story, or are you coming from a different angle?
I'm going to talk about the passage where he talks about his tomb being a borrowed tomb. And the title of the sermon is just Trouble Won't Last Always. So the fact that it was a borrowed tomb means that he didn't need it long. He was just only going to be there for a while, and then he was going to give it right back to him. So for those of us that feel like we may be in a borrowed tomb, we may be in a season that we didn't plan on, it's just temporary. It won't last always. He didn't come to the tomb to stay, but he got up. A friend of mine, we were talking the other day, a group of preachers online, and he said, every great leader that's been used by God has experienced quarantine. Paul, after being his road to Damascus experience, David, after being anointed king, went back and was on the backside of the hills for years. Moses was on the other side of Egypt before Jethro got. Greg, I see you writing it down. I see you taking notes.
Dude, I'm ripping that off.
I see you right now.
I'm going Elijah hid in the cave, you know.
Exactly, yeah. So you walk down the list and you'll see. So don't allow quarantine to intimidate you. And just because you're quarantined doesn't mean we're quitting. As a matter of fact, even Jesus himself was quarantined. They put him in a tomb all night Friday, all night Saturday, but early Sunday morning, he came out of quarantine with all power in his hands. And if Jesus came out of quarantine, I wish I had a witness in here. He came out.
Preach it, baby.
Power. If he came out, then you're going to come out of quarantine with all power in his hands, with all power. So God isn't intimidated by quarantine, so we shouldn't be. The resurrection, there's some things that can't be quarantined, and that is the power and the resurrection of God.
You know, Albert, I think thank you for sharing that. Really inspiring right there. But I'm thinking even the quarantines really are what God uses to prepare us for future mission. And how can we view this quarantine that we're in right now to be prepared by God, right? Yeah, Josh, you're leaning into, what's your passage you're preaching from this weekend?
Well, I'm going to touch on, obviously, the disciples and how, yes, they're running, they scatter, and that's how they respond in fear. But after the resurrection, they respond in hope, and they're running out into places of danger. But then I'm going to come actually back to Ephesians, actually, chapter 1, where it says, I pray that the eyes of your heart might be enlightened in order that you might know the hope the hope to which he's called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance and his holy people, incomparable great power for us who believe. And then he says this, you want to know what the type of power that's accessible to us believers? The power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ from the dead and seated him at the right hand in the heavenly realms. And so here's what I really believe is going on though around the nation. I think God wants to display power. You know, so you think about what does that hope look like? Well, it's a future hope in heaven, but it's also a present hope where power is being demonstrated in people's lives, where marriages are being restored and people are seeing God provide work for them that they never had, and relationships are being fixed and addictions are being broken. And I think it's time that the church just starts actually praying, that we don't just say, oh, yeah, we believe God can work with power, but the pastors would start opening their mouths and start actually praying that God would demonstrate power in powerful ways. In fact, we've been doing this. I told you, you know, at night, we're praying for people. We're praying for healing. We're praying for, even breakthrough in homes. And we get back testimonies every single day of people going, God showed up in a powerful way in my house last night when you prayed. And so I just think, man, we gotta go after that. We have the resurrection power.
That's a great opportunity we need to take advantage of this weekend too, with all of those guests. Now you have your normal church people, but all of those guests who are going to be joining us online, this is another way to engage them. If you have a prayer request, how can we pray for you? Click here. And that way you can collect some information as well to follow up with them, but you can legitimately have a team praying for them as well. Just kind of thinking creatively about how to take advantage of this opportunity to engage people that would never before have stepped foot in the church building. Hey, Albert, I want to come back to you. So you're known for your humor. I mean, you're just a funny guy when you preach, hilarious. And talk about some of how are you going to use humor this weekend? Are you going to use it? Are you going to tell COVID-19 jokes? I mean, talk about that balance there.
Yeah, I think for sure people are looking for hope and they want to feel better. So they're not coming to church for a funeral, definitely not Easter. So while things are grim and things are hard, I think we need to intentionally think about how we want to lift people's souls and spirits. I can use humor because I use humor, but if you normally don't use humor, now ain't the time to start experimenting on Easter Sunday with COVID-19 jokes. Like, that's just not a good idea. You see what I'm saying? So even me saying that is funny, but it's the way that I said it and it's appropriate. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's taking advantage and just making sure that you lift people and encourage people. Laughter is just one great way to do that. There are other ways to do it, but I'll for sure use some humor. Humor is different when you don't have a live audience, when you're talking to a camera, because you don't have the immediate laughter in the room. So the management of energy is different, but I would think of humor as an energy provider. And there are other energy providers in the room, because what we're doing when we're preaching, a lot of times we don't realize this, we're managing energy, and it's energy, it's climax, it's tension, it's release. So all of those dynamics can lift people's hearts and souls and bring about something that they walk out feeling better and inspired and more relaxed. People are going to be people are stressed out. People hadn't. So one of the things that I've been doing is just telling people, hey, let's just take 10 seconds and breathe. And for some people, that's the first time they physically release tension in their body, because they're just tight. They're just holding it. So I'm definitely going to use, we'll laugh some, we'll cry some, we'll try to use all those things to bring about freedom and exhale to people that have just been holding their breath all week.
You know, Albert, I sometimes say humor is kind of the anesthesia so we can do surgery. And yes, you know, when we use humor, I want people to walk out and go, wow, God just performed surgery on my heart, and I didn't even realize it was happening. I was laughing and having so much fun, right?
Yes, hey, that's really good. I like that.
Josh, how long do you typically, like if you were just, you know, preaching on a normal weekend in your building, how long do you normally preach?
Like 30 minutes to 35 maybe. I would try to keep it to 30 though.
Okay, are you doing about the same amount of time for this weekend?
Yeah, but once again, like I said at the beginning, is I'm opening with a game actually that's interactive from them at home and here, and so that all is part of it. And so I would say my lessons are probably a tad shorter than.
Okay. I think you just froze up at the end there. I'm not sure if everybody else could hear you. You're a little bit shorter than normal.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But pretty close.
Okay, Albert, how about you? How long do you normally preach? And then how long are you going this weekend?
I'm usually probably about 40 minutes. And, this weekend I'm thinking about going 50. Let's add it on. Where they got to go? They ain't got nowhere to go. They ain't got nothing else to do. Where they going? They got to get out for dinner. They got to go to the park. Where they going? They ain't going nowhere. Sit down and listen to this word.
My son's going to go play Fortnite a lot, Albert. If you're going 50 minutes, 20 minutes into your sermon, he's going to go, Dad, can I go,
I really want to know, Albert, what are your kids doing when you sit them down and you make them listen to you? My kids, they're like rolling over. I'm like, guys, someone's up there preaching. Pay attention. And it's me.
For my real talk, for my 13-year-old and my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old, I said, after this sermon, I'm giving you a test. And they get out their notes and they take notes and they capture it and they get it all. And it actually works. I hadn't given them a test yet, but they have good notes and they're ready. And then I'll hook them up. I'll throw some cash their way or something at some point for just being good attention. But it's less about, for me, time matters for sure. So I'll probably realistically go about 35 minutes or so, but I won't do like 15 minutes to 20 minutes. I don't feel pressure to make it short. I feel pressure to make it good. And if it's really good, I feel like I can capture people's attentions in their hearts. If they'll sit and watch some of the lame shows that they watch on TV for an hour, I think I got a good shot at capturing them with the greatest story that's ever been told in a way that's innovative, creative, and inspiring, where I can hold their attention. So preachers, I think, fall to the pressure. And it's a cultural thing too, right? I grew up in the Black church. Time wasn't that important. In the white evangelical church, time is right up there. It's the fourth person of the Trinity. So that's a really, really big deal. I think people put too much pressure on time, and they need to use that energy to put on good. People sit for quality, and our culture shows us that all the time. Hamilton, I was there for about 3 hours with Hamilton, but it was amazing. It was great. Titanic, it took them 4 hours to get that ship under the water. All that time, you know what I mean? It's a long movie. People sit and they watch it, and it's a classic. People care less about time, and they care way more about quality. And that's what I want to try to bring to the Easter experience.
Yeah, so I would say, listen, if you know that preaching is, you're like Josh and Albert, and these guys are fantastic communicators. I would encourage you, make it, do like Albert said, make it high quality, work hard on it like Josh is. But listen, if preaching isn't your big deal, if you go, I think I'm a B-level preacher or whatever, which, God bless you, that's fantastic. Don't think you have to go 40 minutes. Go 20 minutes and use creative elements that will really keep people engaged as well. I think we have to own our own gifting and how it comes across on the screen. Hey, we just got a question. Yeah. If we're expecting...
hold on a second, Greg.
Yeah,
Let me just jump on that real quick. Because that's what I mean. It's about quality. So sometimes quality could be 10 minutes. So that my Good Friday service, I'm only going to do about 10 or 15 minutes. And it's going to be one of the most powerful things because I'm being very intentional. The quality is going to be strong. So quality lets you say, let me get the content first. And then the second question is, how long does it take me to get that content out? Is that 10 minutes or is it 40 minutes? But not allowing time to dictate the quality and the innovation, but allowing quality and experience to dictate it. Then ask yourself the question, how long does it really take to do that? Sometimes it only takes 10 or 15 minutes. And you don't need to feel the fresh pressure to fluff and do that, because then you lose quality. All right, go ahead, Greg. Let's get the question.
Okay, here's a question. If we're expecting our people to stay at home, are we sending them a mixed message by having a worship team and teaching from the building? Now, Josh, you're not doing that, or are you? Talk about that, you guys. What are you doing with that? Are you recording with your team at the building? What message are you sending?
We are recording from the building. We do it on Saturday night. We do it live, but we've been using the exact same team, and we've kind of made a commitment to one another that we are basically kind of group quarantined, if you will, and keeping true to one another, that this is our group of 10. But it's a bare bones. I mean, so we got 6 people on the worship team. Our tech team is pretty bare bones right now, trying to pull it all off with kind of keeping that low limit, and we're social distancing. Even on stage we are. No one's closer than 6 feet to one another, and so we're trying to at least demonstrate from the stage this level of honor to what our government is asking of us.
Yeah, and I think for most states right now, the gathering size is 10 people. And so if you're staying in social distancing, Albert, what are you guys doing? Are you recording from the building? What are you doing?
No, so we're at home. So we had the opposite response, and that's why I think it's so good. It's so much better. My best friend is doing the same thing. He's in the church building, but we decided the other way. And there's no right or wrong answer here. I think it's just thinking through it and how you do it. We didn't want to, while we're trying to get to our peak, everything is just extremely hyper contagious. And some of our sound people have pregnant wives at home, or some people that have immune deficiency, or a grandpa or young kids. So we just said, let's mitigate the risk and just force creativity. So I'm shooting my sermon from my den. Last week, our worship team, they did their portions in their homes. So we got a drummer that's on the drums in his house. And then they sent that recording, and then we had an engineer in his home take all of that together, mix it in together. And on the images on the screen, you just see people worshiping in their house. And I think that speaks to the person that's asking that question. It says to them, all right, the team is sacrificing in their homes doing it. And we're in our home. So what felt like, man, this feels like a lowbrow production, except it's a culture now where people aren't even expecting high production. To be honest, low production is oddly rewarded because it identifies with people in their homes and where they are. But at the same time, I've got friends that are in the studio, in their churches, in their studios with the sound techs, and they're being very careful and being very cautious. The main thing is we want people to be safe. And I don't, no one on these teams, if they ended up with coronavirus, I wanted to be able to say we did everything we could to keep them safe. And I know, people that are in their churches, they're wiping stuff down and doing that. So everybody's got the same heart. Some of us are getting after it in different ways.
Okay, so this weekend, every study is saying we are going to see the largest Easter attendance in history. It's literally, everybody's expecting this, not just the normal, you could double your weekend gathering at home attendance, but there's going to be even a surge beyond that, because people that would never go in your building will join you online. How are you preparing as you preach to engage all of those new guests?
Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is ask them for an offering, because they've missed so many Sundays.
Absolutely.
They owe some back pay, some back taxes.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna claim that. But beyond that, just making sure that as I tell the story, we consider people that have never heard it before, that we display gospel hospitality, and just show people the love of Jesus Christ, and just be ourselves. The last thing I want to do is become another version of myself because of the audience. And then next week they come in and be like, well, what is this? This ain't, so try to be simple and just tell the story. People are looking for hope. They're not looking for a lot of production, and a lot of extra stuff is just downplayed. Look at these artists. These artists are going on Instagram in their dens with a guitar and doing full-on concerts, and people are loving it. It's amazing. So while everything else is stripped down, I think it's important for the church to not be tone deaf to what's happening in the culture. God is saying, yeah, it could just be about the story, and tell the story and tell it as if people have never heard it before. And I think people are going to respond well. Yeah.
How about you guys, Josh? How are you going to engage all those new people?
Well, I think for us, a big piece is just reminding all of us as we talk to people, to talk as if that they don't know our culture, they don't know our context, they don't know, even it's changed our language, my language, when I refer to a local restaurant, I always refer to it now as a local restaurant right here in town, not, and I'm assuming I've got people watching from Texas and Florida and all over the nation now. And I think one of the biggest things that pastors might just downplay, especially if let's say you got a church of 100 people, you might go, that's not me, that's Josh, that's Albert Tate. And I'm going, no, I think it's you. I think if your people share, if you're using any shareable platform, you should assume you got people watching from outside of your area, and you need to communicate to them. And then the other thing that I would say is just don't be afraid to make the big ask. Ask them to put their faith in Christ. I mean, set them up or assume it. I'm basically kind of saying every single time I go to preach a message right now, I'm assuming someone is going to give their life to Christ. I just assume it. And I think if we approach it that way and we pray toward that way, and then we set people up to make that response, and then we help them take a next step afterward, they will. There are people every single week who are going to say yes to Jesus, and they're going to be looking for how do I take the next step.
I actually just recorded a video, and we're sending out to more than 10,000 of our prayer partners at Stadia. And one of the things I ask people to pray for is that there's more decisions made for Jesus this weekend than ever before. And,
right.
We have that potential to do that. All right, Albert, what are you doing with the offering this weekend?
It's our normal deal. At the end, I just invite people to give through text, through online, and those kinds of things. We're actually launching a fellowship relief fund where our goal is to try to start it with $100,000 so that we can give away resources to families who are in need, experiencing hardship. So to be honest, that'll be the main story from our service. The takeaway won't be, wow, they're trying to get money from us. It'll be, wow, they're trying to give money away. Let me be a part of this community because I love what they're about. So that hopefully from the offering moment will be what people will take away. It'll be us positioning ourselves to give away in that time as opposed to just getting.
And Josh, I want to come back to you because so we're expecting people to make decisions for Jesus. What are you going to do? Like, are there next steps you're going to talk about?
Yeah, so actually that's one of those pieces that we're following up with. One of my pastors is trying to just dial in what's our simple next step. We're trying to make it so memorable that someone, even in a family setting, if they made a decision for Christ and we're like, hey, do this next step, that if they're like, I'm embarrassed, even in front of my family, to click a button, a lot of people click a button, raise your hand digitally or whatever. We're trying to make, what's that next step? So for us, it's probably going to be like the word next or the word follow to a 5-digit text, number. So something that someone can remember and be like, even if I'm embarrassed here in front of my family, to let someone know I can take a next step and I can remember that word and those 5 numbers, and I'm going to do it as soon as I walk out of this room, and then from there, then we'll have a handful of different follow-up steps that they automatically get an automatic response to. Hey, what did you do? Did you decide to follow Christ today? Are you interested in getting in a group? Those type of things.
So I love that. That's fantastic. Hey, so lots of people are going to be joining us and, kind of keeping in line with even Easter's in our normal locations in the past. I'm on the teaching team at River Tree, which is our home church. And the weekend after Easter, we're launching a series called Overcoming. And, overcoming anxiety, overcoming depression, a series of these that we believe will be a very felt need for people to say, come back and join us again next weekend. Albert, what are you guys launching out of this? Are you in the middle of a series now? Are you going to launch a new series?
We're in the middle of a series called The Red Letters, and it's teaching through the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus giving us pictures of what it what it means to pray, what it means to live out this Christian ethic. So I think we're going to pick up there, but making sure that our application is very sensitive to the times and the seasons that we're in.
Yeah. How about you guys, Josh? Where are you headed?
Yeah, we're in the middle of a series as well called Anxious for Nothing, and it's on Philippians chapter 4. Paul writes this from quarantine, being anxious for nothing. And so we were 2 weeks in, and we're just going to continue that on the other side of it. And once again, every week is enough or easy enough that anyone can hop in on any given week. It will be applicable, and it'll be energizing.
Okay, so Josh, you have 9 biological children living at home with you. I have to say biological just to kind of toot your horn, if you will. Man, where are you getting away to write your sermons?
I just do it in my bedroom. That's kind of my home office. I've been officing out of my house and for years. Actually, I usually write it at home. And actually now I can come to the church. This place is empty. I can be all alone. If I want to be alone, this is the only place where I can come. It's back to the church. And
I don't know, Josh. Your room seems like the most productive. Your bedroom seems like the most productive room that I've ever heard of. So You
It
could probably
is.
birth a lot of things out of there, man. I'd write my sermons in there. That place has life coming out of it.
It does. It does.
Okay.
Beautiful
and so
life.
Albert, you're no slacker either. How many kids do you have, Albert?
Oh, I'm for sure a slacker now. I got 4. I thought that was a lot. I'm ready to go tell them to scoot over. We need to add something. Josh
You
is
do.
waiting.
You go get La Rosa to listen to this. It's time for you
I
guys to
know.
keep going down
I
the
know,
road.
right?
Albert, where are you
Yeah.
writing? Seriously, where are you doing your study and writing your sermons? Because this is weird when you're at home.
Yeah, I'm outside a lot. So I've been going outside, sitting out when the weather is nice, and out here most of the time the weather is nice. But right now it's currently raining out. So then I'm kind of in the bedroom. But yeah, just carving out little corners and spaces in the house. But at the same time, taking advantage of the discomfort of the study time, so I don't get lost in there, and actually engage with the kids at home. Because it would be easy for me. I've got enough content to deliver that I could justify locking away and not being engaged, even in the quarantine at home. So I kind of like having to move around my stuff and find a place to study, because it forces me not to stay there too long.
And, I think each of us have to find our own rhythms of study. For me, I really can work on a sermon for a half an hour in my home office. And it's actually healthy for me to walk downstairs and talk to my wife or play with my 11-year-old son and then come back to it. Now, I know some people can't do that, but that's kind of the way I operate. And you kind of have to figure out what works for you. I mean, some people need to squirrel away for 3 hours straight. I just can't do that. What are your study habits, Josh? How are you writing?
I typically write for maybe 3 hours on a Monday morning and 4 hours, that type of thing. I knock out an outline by then, and then I put it down. I just kind of let that thing simmer, and then I finish it up. Really, I bring it probably to 95% finished by Wednesday by noon. And a lot of that is just kind of deadlines. You've got your presentation, people need stuff. My wife, who's our worship pastor, she needs certain things. That's why by Monday by noon, I have to give her a real good kind of understanding where we're heading for the weekend. Then she builds her whole set list around that.
And then Albert, what's your rhythm with that, with study?
I kind of sit and do like you, Greg. I'll sit on thoughts and themes mentally throughout the week, sitting down for 30 minutes at a time here and there. And then I'll sit down probably around, well, there's a new normal now, but back in the olden days when we met on the weekends, I would sit down on Friday and Saturday and really lock it down. But I wouldn't get the sermon locked down to probably about 2 o'clock on Saturday before the 5 o'clock service, because it's an evolving piece for me. I know where I'm going, so if I could force myself, I could do a detailed outline probably on Monday, but I just let it germinate. I acquire illustrations, stories, sense what's happening in that week, and then kind of lock it down. So our worship team and our slides people and all those folks would love working at your church, Josh.
Okay.
Once again, I get like that 90%. Then I'm like you, where I keep adding it. You got a gut of like, nah, it's not finished, all the way up until Saturday afternoon. You just keep adding stuff until it's right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we just have a couple more minutes here before we wrap up. Lots of leaders, and literally, thousands of preachers are going to be watching this before this weekend. As they are preparing, heading into this weekend, what words of encouragement would you say to them about preaching this Easter in the midst of this pandemic?
I believe it was Karl Barth, but it was an old theologian I know for sure. He's having a conversation about church attendance and why people come back to church over and over and over to hear sermons. And this old man told the young preacher, he says, they don't come back to hear your sermon as much as you think. They come back to see if you still believe. I think this Sunday, the sermon is important, but your faith and your trust in God being on display for your people to see that you still believe is probably one of the greatest gifts that you can give them. We live in a time now when people are suffering, the anxiety is strong, and people may take this the wrong way, but I don't care. Your exegesis may not be as important as your message of hope and your ability to believe in front of your people and encourage your people. Like some of these guys, they get so deep in the Greek and the Hebrew and all that kind of stuff. Listen, people need to be encouraged. People got people dying. People got people on ventilators. They don't know what they don't care what the Greek means. They want to know that you still believe and why you believe, and encourage them why they should believe, because that's what's going to give them hope on Monday morning. And I'm as exegetical as I'll drop some Greek on you right now. So I have a great respect for it, but people need hope. People need encouragement. They don't need to know how much you study. They need to know how much you care.
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah. And I would say that I think it's, Albert just hit it. The whole preach something that communicates you still believe, but man, preach it in such a way that they are going, I think they need to see that you are hopeful for the future, and that you're hopeful for what God is up to, and that you see something that's bigger in the midst of all this. So yesterday I saw this video. There's a buddy of mine. He's the director at a camp that's just a couple hours from us. And just last week, their pole building that has all of their equipment. I mean, everything from all their building equipment, all their high ropes and, adventure gear, everything is on fire and burning. So it's all catches fire. The whole thing goes up. And their whole staff is out there standing around the building as it's burning. And my buddy, who's the director, his dad, who's in his 80s, is standing beside him as they're watching everything burn. And his dad literally looks at him and he goes, "Let's go. Don't shed a tear. Let's go. We can rebuy. We can rebuild. We can make all this happen. Let's go." And he said, man, in that moment, he's like, all right, we can do this. And I feel like the world might feel like it's burning around us, but we who have the hope of Jesus Christ and the resurrection in our sights, that we're able to look at everything burning around us and say, guys, let's go. Like, let's get after this. Let's save souls. Let's watch people get healed. Let's watch marriages restored. Let's see family members who have gone distant get back together. Like, let's see people apologize for things they've never apologized before about. Let's see things restored. Let's, like, crying out loud, we got the greatest news on the planet, that Jesus Christ raised from the dead. And if that doesn't give you hope, what are you doing as a pastor? Let's go. So from an 80-year-old man who saw everything burning in front of him, I go, man, that's the attitude I want to have. Says, let's get after it.
That's good. That's good, Josh. Josh, I thought you was going to say, he was going to say, let's go call the insurance company. But maybe they got the loan. Yeah, maybe they got around to that at some point. But man, Josh, that's so inspiring. That might just make the sermon. I might just have made a edit right now.
Dude, you just steal that.
Josh Amstutz, Albert Tate, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, we're going to be praying for you as leaders throughout this holiday weekend, this amazing celebration for us to bring the good news of Jesus Christ like never before. Hey, everyone, we have a podcast called the Church Planting Podcast. Season 2 launched yesterday on Monday, and it is all about when God shows up in difficult times. Get on, any podcast app that you have, look up the Church Planting Podcast. I think episode 1 is with our friend, Albert Jossi Chaco. And man, I was on the edge of my seat recording that with Jossi. You want to hear these stories about when God shows up in difficult times. Might get some great Easter illustrations as well. Hey, thanks everyone. We'll look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.
All right. Peace.
Thanks, guys.